made a decision to recruit some kids around the country. Through them winning their injunction and entry into the portal, they're available to recruit. At the end of the day, because of these rulings, they're either going to play for you or they're going to play somewhere else around the country.
So this is a significant story, and I wanted to put together the best group I could for it today, and we certainly did that. We got PaulFinebaum, we got Dan Wetzel, pardon me, and we have Heather Dinich. Paul, I just want to quickly get your reaction to what Lane Kiffin, this was the first real comment we've heard from him. How did you think Lane Kiffin handled that yesterday?
I think he missed the boat, Greedy. Kiffin's smart, he's crafty, but he should have said something that all college football fans will understand. Nobody wants to play for the Cleveland Browns, and everyone wants to play for the LSU Tigers. That would have worked. Instead, he tried to look down at his notes, something that the legal staff had written for him, and he wildly miffed. But there is no easy way to explain it, but that would have done the job.
Dan Wetzel, I've had people talk about this like the sky is falling. It's not the first time that I've heard that. I remember that when the transfer portal first became a thing and when NIL first became a thing. So how would you describe this particular moment that we find ourselves in collegiate sports?
Absurd and comically absurd at the exact same time, because you can make cracks like Paul did. Look, this is probably a one-time issue. It's a one-year issue. And yes, it is crazy. We're signing guys off the Cleveland Browns back to college. It's a boomerang effect. But this is not going to probably be a widespread set. And I say probably because we never thought we would get here. But this was somewhat predictable when last year we had players getting signed off, basketball players getting signed off G League teams in the midseason, European pro leagues, former NBA draft picks. So eligibility is the number one problem that college athletics has. It is not in control of the system. It somehow needs to get to that. But it's not going to be a widespread thing. There's not going to be 100 guys coming back to college.
I want to read a statement, Heather, from the SEC yesterday. The SEC released a statement, and you can give us context. It said, college athletes, not former professional athletes, have been at the heart of the Southeastern Conference. Individuals who choose to leave college athletics, sign professional playing contracts, and compete professionally should not then be permitted to return to college competition. Allowing that to occur will blur the line between college and professional sports, create significant competitive equity concerns, and reduce opportunities for high school and current college athletes. College sports are for college athletes. The current confusion around national eligibility standards emphasizes the need to advance the Protect College Sports Act. Obviously, LSU is in the SEC. This was the SEC coming out with this statement. Heather, what should we be thinking?
Well, we should be thinking that the very coaches who sit around all summer at media days and say we need hard and fast eligibility rules to follow are the very ones who are then saying, oh, look at this loophole. I can use it to get a tight end who I coached before and can help my offense. So while the SEC is asking the NCAA and the United States government for help to fight this, the coaches in their conference are saying, why don't you come on over here and play with me because I can make a spot for you on my roster. Greeny, what's happening is having a trickle-down effect all the way to the high school level. And this has been Greg Sankey's point. You can't damage these other players on your roster who have invested 8 months all summer to play for you, and high school players who think they have a spot and 5 years to play for this one player who can't cut it in the pros.
I understand all the ways in which this sounds awful, and probably is awful, and is most certainly unfair to the people who are already there. But Dan Wetzel, there's one part of this I need you to help me understand. The distinction between professional athletes and non-professional athletes, right? They used to be called amateur athletes. So in the SEC statement here, they talk about players who have signed professional playing contracts. When you sign a contract to play for, let's just say LSU, and you sign a contract and they pay you $5 million, how is that different from signing a professional contract anywhere else?
Well, that's part of what college athletics finds their problem when they go in front of a judge and they look at these things without the emotion of what we should be doing or what would be good or the feelings of this player or not. And that's why there's such a losing streak on these issues. Daquan Wright and these guys are going to make more money playing at LSU than they would have if they played at the Cleveland Browns. Certainly, if they had made the team, or maybe a practice squad or something like that. So there's a lot of incentive to come back. The line between these are already blurred. I think what Sankey and these guys would prefer, and the commissioners would prefer, is once you declare you are going to the pros, you renounce your ability to return to college athletics, and that would certainly create a little bit of an even playing field. Not every school can add guys this late. LSU's classes started yesterday, so at some point, and we can all laugh, there is supposed to be an education component, like how many days of class can you miss and still pass? I'll leave that to Paul, but he might know better. But that's really the issue here is, are we going to turn into pro sports? We're just adding guys off the street in the middle of the season. Or is Quan Wright leave LSU and go back to the pros if someone tries to call him up because he has a good first week on tape? Where is this? Is this purely minor league, or is this something different?
Go ahead, Paul. Help me here. I mean, I just keep filling in blanks for me here. I find the whole thing endlessly fascinating. I can play your other sound bites. Let me play one more. Oregon coach Dan Lanning. He had a different perspective yesterday, one that he believes protects the integrity of his current roster. Let's hear what he said.
I think there's a lot of negatives that are involved around this. One, once you go to the NFL, to me, you're in the NFL. You don't get the opportunity to come back. Two, most of us have built our rosters, and you have a limited roster limit now. So if you invited somebody back to your team, that means you're kicking somebody else off your team, right, to match your roster limits. I don't think that's fair to the players that worked all summer, all spring, and put themselves in position to be ready to work for a team. It used to be once you had an agent, or once you went and did the combine, or once you went to all those things qualified as you are no longer an amateur, you're a professional now once you declare for the draft. So to let any of those players come back, fair or unfair to them, it's unfair to the sport, and I think it's unfair to the players that are on current teams, for those guys to be coming back.
How about that one, Paul?
College sports is a total sham, Greeny. We know that. You know that, and so do the commissioners. And at least the one thing that statement didn't have, Heather and Dan, is at least they didn't call these people student athletes. But we'll hear that later on. What the SEC should have done is said, listen, we are in charge, and if you play that guy in the first game of the season, we are going to forfeit that, and we are going to suspend the coach. Fining wouldn't do any good because LSU already has a $50 or $60 million roster, so they'll find the money elsewhere. But say something. Don't just issue another empty press release. Don't ask the United States Congress to bail you out when you have failed already.
And I think Dan touched on this briefly earlier, Heather, but this is a problem that actually extends beyond college football. There is the status of R.J. Lewis Jr., who was a college basketball player who went to the NBA. He was on the Celtics G League team. He played in NBA preseason games.
Know people who have women's lacrosse coaches asking their players, hey, can you come back here for another year? But Greeny, I'm going to go back to what Paul said, because right now, today and tomorrow, SEC presidents and chancellors and athletic directors are meeting in Birmingham, Alabama, to talk about ways they can create and enforce their own rules. This goes back to what we talked about at SEC Media Days in July. How can they do this? How can they enforce it? Can they do something like Paul is talking about in terms of punishing players that do this? But look, the reality is that this boils down to a judge in a state of Louisiana, and state-by-state rules are what are making this extremely messy. Wetzel wrote a great column on ESPN.com, and I agree with him wholeheartedly. If you're going to ask the federal government for help, do it in a skinny bill. Focus on eligibility. I think Dan is absolutely right. That is a great way to try to fix this.
Yeah, I mean, so there needs to be some sort of comprehensive rules here, because right now we're just dealing with a million different things. There's one other thing I just wanted to get Paul's comment on. Well, actually, Paul, go ahead. You raised your hand there. I want to hear what you have to say.
I just want to make one final point about basketball. Remember something. Go back 5 years. LSU fired Will Wade as a basketball coach because they felt he broke NCAA rules. They just brought him back. So what else do you need to know? LSU is a rogue school when it comes to these rules. They're part of the SEC, but they might as well be some independent nation out there with its own army.